أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This research method is about taking the context and language of the Quran and then using our lexicons and going through that with the hadith sahih, inshallah. So today what we're going to talk about is taqwa. So we're going to define taqwa, and as I said, it is awareness, or you can say awareness to make things easier. And we ask the question, can awareness and aggression meet? What does gathering awareness do for us? Awareness is one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's signs. It is one of God's signs. Awareness is the garment which deviants want to tear off of us. That's something we should be aware of. Awareness is our most valuable provision. What happens when we lose or are blinded to the garment of awareness? Awareness is gathered from each and every act of worship, where we should be aware of God, as in ittaqullah, the Quran tells us, and where we must be aware of God as is his due. And also, we're going to look at two words in Arabic, which in English are always mixed up, which is alladhina taqaw, meaning those who are attaining awareness, versus al-muttaqeen, meaning those who are the aware. A noun, which is the aware, a title they've earned, versus a verb, as in something they are doing or in the process of doing. And there's a big, big difference between nouns and verbs. And we are going to also find out how taqwa is embedded in everything we do. And actually, Allah created us that we should have taqwa. That's the way we are created. It's our nature, which is why when we have taqwa, we go back to our nature, inshallah, which is our pure nature, not the nature which we sort of like gain through time. And at the end, we realize the importance of Ramadan in helping us gather awareness. So these are the steps. That's what we're going to be doing today, inshallah. What is taqwa? Now, everybody has an idea of what taqwa is, but the way it's been explained in most of our books is that people have taken, scholars have taken what the Sahaba added, the information which the Sahaba added about taqwa to what they already know. So when you know something very well, often you don't talk about it in the same way as if you're teaching somebody what that means, because you're telling them how you feel about it, you're telling them a different way to look at it. So let us look here at what taqwa is, the common understanding, which we know that we hear everybody, the scholars and books tell us. Well, first of all, taqwa, most say it is piety. Some say it is fear. Some say it is obedience. And actually, it's a shield from God's anger, astaghfirullah al-azim. Also, that is what is sometimes used. So these are the common meanings of taqwa. But taqwa, we know what it is because of what has reached us from our predecessors, radiallahu anhum, and from the Qur'an. So what has reached us from our predecessors is very interesting. We know this one very well, and there are some which you'll find quite interesting. This one we know. Umar ibn al-Khattab and Ubay ibn Ka'ab, Umar asked Ubay about taqwa, and Ubay said, أما سلكت طريقا ذا شوك? Have you not been or walked through a thorny path? And Umar said, yes. And Ubay said, what did you do? He said, شمرت واجتهدت. I put up my clothing and I walked carefully. And Ubay said, فذلك التقوى. So here you see an example of taqwa, not the definition of taqwa. This is very important. Please notice. It's an example of taqwa, and it's an amazing example for somebody who already knows the definition. The problem is that they did not tell us the definition in so many words. Why? Why did they not tell us? Because it's in the Qur'an. They did not need to tell us because the definition is in the Qur'an. So that's their what? That's their expression of what taqwa is like. We have also the qawl of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. What did he say? التقوى هي الخوف من الجليل والعمل بالتنزيل والقناعة بالقليل والاستعداد ليوم الرحيل. A beautiful, expression telling us that it is about having awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and working with the Qur'an and being appreciative of whatever little you have and being ready for the day of judgment or the day in which you leave this world. So that is beautiful, isn't it? But is it the definition of taqwa, or is it what taqwa, how they express taqwa, how it is expressed? Okay, now we have, honestly, all our scholars, they have their own expression of what taqwa is. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, who died in the year 32 after Hijrah, he said, تمام التقوى أن يتقي الله العبد حتى يتقيه من مثقال ذرة, that you have the taqwa even from a atom's weight. Ibn al-Qayyim said in his ta'rif, and he died in 751 after Hijrah, which is much later. And he said, حقيقتها العمل بطاعة الله إيمانا واحتسابا أمرا ونهيا. So they're actually telling you that you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command in faith and in what he says to do, the do's and don'ts, basically. Okay? Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, he says, أصل التقوى أن يجعل العبد بينه وبين ما يخافه ويحذره وقاية تقيه منه. So he's giving us now what? The definition of the word. He says, it is that you keep between you and what you are aware of, or what you beware of, you leave between you and it something to prevent or save you from getting into it. And that's the taqwa, that's the wiqaya. And we have also in Arabic a saying, al-wiqayatu khayrun min alfi ilaj, that prevention is better than medicine, that when preventing something is much better than actually getting it and having to deal with it. So wiqaya is prevention. You can say wiqaya is prevention. All of these beautiful, beautiful expressions of taqwa, they tell us, they are giving us an expression of taqwa, or what taqwa feels like, or what taqwa looks like, or what we do regarding taqwa. But they are not actually defining taqwa, except that one definition which told us that it's about prevention. They're not actually defining taqwa for what it really is. Why? Because it's in the Qur'an. So they knew what taqwa was. They were just elaborating, talking amongst one another, talking to people who knew what taqwa is, and just elaborating. So when we focus on the conversations of the Sahaba, when we focus on the hadith, whatever it is, and leave Qur'an aside, what we get is an elaboration. What we get is the, let's say, the light, the way, the expression, the actual method in which something is executed, yes, but you do not get the definition, because the definition is in the Quran. It is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So that's so important. I mean, you could just listen to any scholarly discussion. Just, if you were a fly on the wall in any university, and you're listening to what they're saying. So what do you get from that talk? You don't get what's happening. You get how they feel about it, what they see about it. So it's very important to go to the data itself rather than to the elaborations. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his words are haqq, qawluhu al-haqq. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-An'am 673, he says, qawluhu al-haqq. So what he says is the truth. What he says is the justice. So now let's look at taqwa. Taqwa, as far as the lexicons, it is thrusting something away from something with another. So you are using something to thrust something away from you because you want to prevent it from harming you. And subhanallah, as we know, prevention is better than cure, that we said. دفع الشيء الوقاية خير من العلاج. So let us look at this definition. And from here we start with this definition and with the Quranic clarification or Quranic evidence. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in Surah Al-An'am 6:155? He says, وَهَذَا كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مُبَارَكٌ فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَاتَّقُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So this compilation is a compilation of abiding blessings and benefit. So follow it and be aware so that you would be recipients of Allah's mercy. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So what should we do when we want to have taqwa? We should what? Follow this compilation. And this compilation gives us the what? The evidence of what taqwa is. Twice in the Qur'an. In Surah Al-Mujadala 58:9 and in Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:2, we have those very clear words showing us that taqwa is the opposite of udwan. Awareness is the opposite, not of unawareness, but it's the opposite of aggression. Awareness and aggression. This is very important to know because تعرفوا الأمور أو الأشياء بأضدادها. You are able to know what something is by its opposite. Opposites tell you what something is. You'd never know what light and daytime is if not for dark and nighttime. Opposites tell you what something is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in those two ayahs what? That the opposite of taqwa is udwan. The opposite of awareness is aggression. And that is very important to know. So what awareness does is it thrusts away aggression. It thrusts aggression away. Can awareness and aggression ever meet? The answer is no. When you are aware, you thrust away aggression. When you are aggressive, you have lost your awareness. And you can even look at that in your daily lives. Anytime that you find udwan, any type of aggression, you realize that that person has lost awareness. No more taqwa. Now, who or which story in the Qur'an, which Quranic narrative gives us the most, how shall we say, it's not beautiful, but it's the most striking explanation of what udwan and taqwa are. And that is the story of the two sons of Adam in Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:29. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا. So it's the story of the two sons of Adam when one of them offered an offering and it was accepted from one and it was not accepted from the other. And he said, I shall certainly kill you. He said, God only accepts from the aware. What did the other brother say? إِنَّمَا meaning only. إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. God only accepts from the aware. So what did the aware brother do? He said, I shall not extend my arm to kill you, even if you were to extend your arm to kill me. And that's what happened. He was killed by his brother who was not aware. And he was aware, so he did not become aggressive, even in self-defense. He did not harm his brother, even in self-defense. So that is taqwa. Now the muttaqeen, having earned the title, are loved by God. Inna Allah yuhibbu al-muttaqeen. In Surah Ali Imran 3:76, in Surah At-Tawbah 9:4, in Surah At-Tawbah also 9:7, Inna Allah yuhibbu al-muttaqeen. Inna Allah yuhibbu al-muttaqeen. What about al-mu'tadeen, who are the what? The aggressors. In Surah Al-Baqarah 2:190, in Surah Al-Ma'idah 587, in Surah Al-A'raf 755, Inna Allah la yuhibbu al-mu'tadin. So once one has earned the title of Al-Muttaqeen, one is loved by God. Once one has earned the title of Al-Mu'tadin, one is not loved by God. So taqwa, or awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is critical, and it's very important wherever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it is what? According to your ability. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, meaning have awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. And that is related in the ayahs of Surah Al-Taghabun, ayah, Surah 18, ayahs 64 to 15. You will notice it's related to where your family and your wealth are concerned. إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. That's how the verses start, in verse number 15. وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ وَاسْمَعُوا وَأَطِيعُوا وَأَنْفِقُوا خَيْرًا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. So you see that here the ayah tells us to be aware of God as much as we can, because we have no control over what? Over our children, over our wealth, and what we can do with that, and what happens. We have only the ability to نَتَّقِ اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْنَا, to be aware of God there as much as we can. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Whomever is prevented, see, you see the word yuqa? It's the same word as taqwa. It's the same root verb as taqwa. So whoever is prevented, yuqa, from his own avarice, his own covetousness, it is they who are the successful. So your taqwa here is working against your covetousness. It's working, preventing you from being covetous. And with your children and your wealth, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. They are fitna, they're a trial by fire. And with this trial by fire, Allah asks you to do what you can. مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ, what you can. However, there's an ayah which tells you, أَن تَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ, that you should be aware of God. How? As is indeed his due of your awareness. That is a huge, huge calling. That's a huge duty and task. The other one was فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, be aware of God as much as you can. This one is be aware of God as is his due, and it's really huge. How do I know Allah's due? How can I be aware of Allah as is his due? And why did he say that in this ayah? Or in this segment of the Qur'an, the several ayahs? Why did he say that? It is so sad. But when we look at those ayahs, we realize why Allah said that. It's not about your wealth and your children, what they do. It's about you and what you do, so as not to separate, so as not to divide the ummah, so as not to separate amongst yourselves. You have to have taqwa of Allah as much as is his due in that. كيف تكفرون وأنتم تتلى عليكم آيات الله وفيكم رسوله ومن يعتصم بالله فقد هدي إلى صراط مستقيم. Why does Allah tell us in these ayat specifically? And يا أيها الذين آمنوا, it's what? It's talking to us. It's addressed to us. الذين آمنوا, oh, you have attained faith. اتقوا الله حق تقاته. It ends by saying ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون, but I'll get to that later. But it says here in the middle, in the center, اتقوا الله حق تقاته. Why does it say that? Because it's about us, not to allow ourselves to separate. So even if somebody else is separating, I will clutch on. I will not let them throw me away or throw each other away. I will try to be with them and not separate. So it's actually about you. كيف تكفرون وأنتم تتلى عليكم آيات ربكم ورسوله ومن يعتصم بالله فقد هدي إلى صراط مستقيم. How are you denying God while his signs are being rehearsed to you, and in your midst is his messenger? And whoever holds fast unto God has been guided to the straightened path. Okay? Oh, you have attained faith, be aware of God as is indeed his due of your awareness, and do not die except while being purely reverent to him. Muslimun means purely reverent to God and also not doing any harm unto others. So don't die except in that state. And then it goes on. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And hold fast unto the rope of God all together. جَمِيعًا. The word جَمِيعًا, even there, if you want to remove it, the sentence is still correct. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of God and do not separate. It's still a very, very strong and correct sentence. But what about the word جَمِيعًا there? اعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. Hold on to the rope of God all together and do not separate. That's the crux of the issue. That's the most important part of it, that you hold on to it all together and do not separate. If I see your hand moving away from Allah's rope, as your sister, as somebody who loves you, I hold your hand. I hold your hand. Even if it's not on Allah's rope, I hold your hand. And in time, I will bring it back to Allah's rope. Look, this is so important. This is what we have missed. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ is about that, about not allowing division amongst ourselves. This is the next ayah. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. And then you do what? You recall Allah's bounty upon you when you were enemies, and then He brought your hearts together. أَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. So the most important thing for us, people of faith, is to have what? Hearts that are holding on to each other. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. So that by Allah's grace you became brethren. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَأَنْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا. You were on the brink of the pit of fire, and He saved you from it. By what? By bringing your hearts together. This is something we can do. We can cleanse our hearts. We can bring our hearts together. That's the way we نَتَّقِ اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ. That's the way we have awareness of God as is His what? Rightful due of our awareness. And then He says, وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ, that there should be of you a people that invite to goodness. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا. So we are now in ayah 101 we started. We are ending in ayah 105. So that's 5 ayahs telling us how to be aware of God as is His rightful due of awareness, which is about us not separating. Not separating. Holding on to each other and not separating. The final ayah there tells us, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. And do not be like those who separated and differed and disagreed, even after they had received the evidences, all the evidences. Al-Bayinat. What happens to them? أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Theirs shall be a grievous suffering. So if you see us Muslims suffering today, know why that's happening. Know why that's happening. We have not held on to what? Taqwa and each other. We have not held on to each other. More than that, even more than that, it is something we should be telling our children. It is a wasiyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us as a wasiyah, to tell our children not to allow division amongst themselves. We have in Surah Al-Baqarah 132, both prophets Abraham and Jacob's dying legacy, which they were leaving to their children, their wasiyah. Wasiyah is a legacy of, how should I say this? It is what you tell your children to do and tell them to tell their children to do. It is something passed on generation after generation. That's a wasiyah. وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبُ. And thus did Abraham entrust unto his children as well as Jacob. Ya bani, O my children, inna Allah astafa lakum ad-din, fala tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. God has chosen for you the standard of accountability. Therefore, do not die except while being purely reverent to Him and having not harmed one another, because that's the Muslim. And that's the definition of Muslim. As far as those of you who've been with me for a while, you know. Having done no harm, That's the definition of Muslim. It's even in Al-Asfahani's definition of Islam. That you seek to be clear and do not wish to bear the brunt of your enemy's pain. You had an enemy, and once you enter into Islam, meaning sin, meaning peace, that enemy becomes someone with whom you are now at peace. So he becomes a partner. And as Al-Asfahani tells us that عندما يدخل الإنسان في الإسلام, what does he do? لئلا يناله من ألم صاحبه, that he will not bear the brunt of his partner's pain. صاحبه, his partner, was somebody who was his enemy once. If that is amongst enemies, what about amongst brothers? What about amongst brothers? This is a legacy we should leave our children to leave their children. Do not separate. Do not separate. So that aside, we go forward now and we look at taqwa and we find out how it was given to us and where. We find that taqwa was prescribed as, subhanallah, the acts of worship were compiled upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compiled upon us, kataba alayna, what? Acts of worship. And those acts of worship compiled upon us were given so that we might have taqwa. They were compiled upon us as duties so that we might have taqwa. And we have this in about prayer, communion, in Surah Taha 21:32. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. And command your family in prayer, in communion, and be consistently patient and forbearing upon it. Istabir alayha is not like asbir alayha. Istabir is about consistency and juhd. Any verb which follows the verb form of ifta'il, istabir means ifta'il, means there is what? Dedication, and there is constancy, and there is determination in it. So there's determination, that's the most important thing. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, meaning you are consistently patient and forbearing when you are what? Commanding your family into communion or prayer. It's communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask you not, Allah says, we ask you not for sustenance or provision. لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ. It is we who actually sustain and provide for you. But the ultimate outcome is for awareness, taqwa. And you shall see, please notice this word. Al-aqibatu lit-taqwa. Notice this line, this statement. Al-aqibatu lit-taqwa. The ultimate outcome, the result, is for awareness. And you will see why in a moment. When we reach the end of this talk today, you'll see why. So that's about prayer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says also, فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمُ الصَّلَاةَ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ. And he says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. So salah is a communion. The communion of salah is upon us a timed compilation. The communion of salah is upon us a timed compilation of communion and communion and communion according to time. Because we should not let a certain amount of time pass without communion. كانت على المؤمنين, upon those who are mu'mineen, those who have not just attained faith, those who have actually gained the title of the faithful. It is upon them a timed compilation. So that's about prayer. How about fasting? Of course, we know the ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah 2:183. يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Oh, you have attained faith. Fasting has been compiled upon you as it was compiled upon those before you. Why? So that you might be aware. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you might be aware. So much is behind our acts of worship. Taqwa is the reason for our acts of worship. Now, an interesting fact, because I do research and I'm looking through Tanzeel, the Qur'an search engine. for the word kataba ala. I want to see if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has any other kataba ala, like as in one expression, not kataba rabbukum alaykum. That's a different thing. But kataba ala, I just want those two words kataba ala together. So I put them between brackets and I put them in the Tanzil and search engine. And what do I get? Kataba ala is something compiled upon, right? Compiled upon as what? As something to be done. Okay. Incumbent, something incumbent upon you to do. And the only two times in the whole Qur'an that kataba and ala come after each other like that are what I just mentioned about kutiba alaykum as-siyam, Surah Al-Baqarah 183, and Surah Al-An'am 12. 2, 183 and 6, 12. What do you find in 6:12? What is kataba ala in 6:12? قُلْ لِمَنْ مَا فِي السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Say to whom is what exists in the exalted expanses and the earth. قُلْ لِلَّهِ. Say, to whom is it? It is to Allah. It is to God. كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. He has made it incumbent upon himself. He has made all rahmah incumbent upon himself. كتب على نفسه الرحمة, the rahmah, all rahmah. ليجمعنكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب فيه الذين خسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون. He shall gather you all towards the day of resurrection in which there is no doubt. At that time, those who, having lacked faith and trust in life, shall realize that they have lost their own selves. خسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون. They didn't have faith and trust, so they have lost their own selves. Let's ask ourselves now, what does gathering awareness or gathering taqwa do for us? When we are aware, يا الذين آمنوا إن تتقوا الله, when we are aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do we get? يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم. So we get all those. The first thing is we get a furqan, we get a criterion, a discernment in the now. What's the meaning of, what's the difference between fariq or something like that and furqan? Furqan is something which is in the now, in the moment. So when you have taqwa of Allah, you get discernment in the moment. As you are going through something, you get a discernment. This is right and this is wrong. Something will tell you at that exact point in time, this is right and this is wrong. You get furqan in the moment. You get fariq, something that tells you the farq or the difference of something to discern, but it's in the moment. In the moment, in the heat of the moment, oh no, this is wrong. So you get that when you have what? Taqwa Allah. And you get also يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم, and you also get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover for you your misdeeds against others. Allah covers for you. And يغفر لكم, and He also forgives you your shortcomings and misdeeds against yourself. So you get all those three when you have taqwa Allah. Taqwa Allah is very important. And also, when you have hidayah, when you have rightful guidance, inshallah, وَالَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا زَادَهُمْ هُدًى وَآتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُمْ. You get even more huda and you get your own taqwa. So it's as if you are a powerhouse yourself now. You're a powerhouse of taqwa yourself. And just by being with you or around you, other people will have taqwa. Because you have your own taqwa now. Allah has given it to you. آتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُمْ. Taqwa is something you should be building upon. If you want to build anything, build it upon taqwa. As we know in Surah At-Tawbah 9108 and 9109 as well, about the masjid of Dirar, which the munafiqeen had, the hypocrites had built, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لا تقم فيه أبدا لمسجد أسس على التقوى أحق أن تقوم فيه من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم. So you must build your establishment or whatever you are building, build your family, build your life, build your job, whatever you're building, you're establishing something from the first day, build it upon taqwa. And that way it will be maintained. Taqwa is one of Allah's signs to us, min ayatillah, and it's the best garment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, what? لا يفتننكم الشيطان كما أخرج أبويكم من الجنة ينزع عنهما لباسهم. Awareness is the garment the deviant shaitan tore off our first parents. And that's what all deviants, they want to tear off of you, is what? Your garment of awareness. And they tear it off of you by fitna, by a trial by fire. You get a trial by fire. It could be war, it could be disease, it could be any kind of difficulty, which is a trial by fire, unbearable, and that leads what? Them to easily take off your taqwa. And that's what they want to do. But worship is a prescription for taqwa. So what we do is when we are tried by fire, we hold on to our worship. And that is a prescription for taqwa. So we know that Ya ayyuhan nas, even to people, not just to alladhina amanu, just to people in general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, a'budu rabbakum, worship your Lord, sustainer, alladhi khalaqakum, those who created you, and those before you, la'allakum tattaqun, Surah Al-Baqarah 221. So even just worshiping God, even if you're not of alladhina amanu, just people outside who decide to worship God, the minute they decide to worship God, they are on their way to taqwa. As for us, now today we are fasting. يا الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام لعلكم تتقون وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تتقون Surah Al-An'am 6:153. So all of this is, all our acts of worship are for taqwa. And do not forget Hajj. الحج أشهر معلومات, the verse begins and ends وتزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى in Surah Al-Baqarah 197. So taqwa is the most important thing that we can gather today and every day of Ramadan, while we are praying, while we are worshiping Allah, while we are on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. It is the most important thing to gather. And we do know that it is, Allah says, libasu taqwa dhalika khayr. Ya bani Adam, O children of Adam, we have sent upon you garmenting that hides your fallibilities. Yuwari sawatikum. Anzalna alaykum libasan yuwari sawatikum warishan. And luxuries. And the garment of awareness. Wa libasu taqwa dhalika khayr. That is best. What? Dhalika min ayatillahi la'allakum tadhakkarun. That is of God's what? Signs. So we have here now 3 layers of garments, or 3 kinds of garments. The first one is what? The one that hides your vulnerabilities, your fallibilities. It is what? Your clothes. What hides your fallibility? The basic things. And then warishan. Rishan is the next level. It is luxuries. From it comes the French word riche, which is luxuries, richness, luxuries. So the first level is the basic level that you need to hide your fallibilities. The next level is the luxuries. You don't need it, but you like to have it. And the next level is the garment of taqwa. That is the highest level. That is God's signs. Now, let me ask you a question. If for some reason you do not see the garment of taqwa, you do not seek the garment of taqwa, so you neither see it nor do you seek it, what is the highest garment which you will be seeking and seeing and none else? It will be the garment of luxuries. That is where we are living today. We are living today in a world that has blinded us to the garment of awareness and shown us the garment next to that, or the lower degree than that, and that's the garment of luxuries. That's why all our eyes and all our sight are what? Are focused on the garment of luxuries. May Allah forgive us. Now we are of alladhina taqaw, inshallah. We are definitely of alladhina amanu, inshallah. The Quran is for us. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. Are we of al-mu'mineen, those who have gained the title? Allahu a'lam. God knows who of us is of al-mu'mineen, who has gained the title. we see that some people do acts of kufr, we might say that they are doing acts of kufr, but we cannot say they are al-kafirun. Because al-kafir, the one who has the title, Allah knows only, because Allah bequeaths the titles. And once you get a title, you do not lose it. It's your title forever. So now we are of alladhina taqaw, insha'Allah, 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 may we be of them. But are we of al-muttaqeen? Some of us are, some of us are not. Allah is the only one who knows. But there's a big difference. Alladhina taqaw are a work in progress. Alladhina amanu are a work in progress. Alladhina amanu could be kafaru next, in the next part of their lives. Amanu thumma kafaru thumma amanu thumma kafaru thumma izdadu kufran. That's in the Qur'an. So anybody who aman can be of somebody who kafar. But anybody who is al-mu'min or al-mu'minin, can they be of al-kafirin? No way. They will not change. They will never change. Okay, so now we're talking about those who attained awareness. We are of those who attained awareness, inshallah, those who are in the process of attaining awareness. Are we of the aware? Are we of al-muttaqeen? Allahu a'lam, who of us is and who of us is not. What are the characteristics of al-muttaqeen? You will find it in Surah Al-Baqarah. ذلك كتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب يقيمون الصلاة مما رزقناهم ينفقون. You find all that. And أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. Ya Rabb, inshallah, we may be among them. But there are lots more in the list of al-muttaqeen. There's much more characteristics in the Quran for al-muttaqeen. Al-muttaqeen, one of their characteristics in Surah Al-Qasas 28:83. تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها الذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. Those who do not want any kind of ulu. They do not want to show themselves and become high in status on this earth. And they do not want to seek corruption on this earth either. But they do not seek heightened status. May Allah forgive us. May Allah forgive us. That's one. Those are al-muttaqeen. The other one, Surah Al-Baqarah 177. It has to do with Iman also. Allah wal yawm al-akhir wal malaika wal kitab wal nabiyyin, all of that. And then as-sabirina fil ba'sa'i wal dharra'i wa hina al-ba's. Those who have ultimate and complete perseverance and patience in all kinds of tribulations. Baqarah 177. And also in Al-A'raf 7201, الذين إن الذين اتقوا, what's another characteristics of theirs? إذا مسهم طائف من الشيطان تذكروا فإذا هم مبصرون. Remember we said that Allah gives them their taqwa. So what happens when they are touched by something from the shaitan that is deviating them away? تذكروا فإذا هم مبصرون. They reflect, recall, remember, and are clear-sighted as to what to do and what not to do. So may we be of al-muttaqeen, but it's not that easy. Also, in Surah Al-Dhariyat 51:19, this is not easy. كانوا قبل ذلك محسنين. They are of the محسنين. كانوا قليلا من الليل ما يهجعون. They would not sleep most of the night. وبالأسحار هم يستغفرون. During the mornings, they would be making istighfar. وفي أموالهم حق للسائل والمحروم. In their wealth, there is a haqq, there is a right for the person who asked and the person who cannot ask but is nevertheless without. Surah Qaf 50:35. أزلفت الجنة للمتقين. Jannah has come close. It comes close. It actually approaches the muttaqin. It doesn't wait for them to come to it. It goes to them. من خشي الرحمن بالغيب وجاء بقلب منيب. He who has awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the unseen and comes to God with a heart that yearns for home. Al-inaba is when you know something and you yearn for it and you want to come back to it. That is Abdin Munib, is somebody who yearns for home. I looked it up in the lexicon. Somebody who wants to go back to somewhere that he knows and is comfortable and yearns for. So who of us is in awe of Ar-Rahman, meaning the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his majesty and his creation and his rahmah? We are in awe of him and we come with a heart that wants to return to him. How many of us are like that? So there are lots of qualities for al-muttaqeen, much more than alladhina taqaw. But despite all that, we are alladhina taqaw, inshallah. Let us be. Before we leave, however, let us say something very important. Something which has been missed. Missed in the tafasir, maybe because people already knew it. As I said, when you look at the lexicon, at the tafasir and what people say and the ahadith, some things are missed, not because they are unknown to the people who said it, but because it's so obvious. And why is it so obvious to them that they don't need to say it? Because it's in the Qur'an. They're not going to repeat the obvious. Okay. So now we're talking about the obvious, what's in the Qur'an, which to us is not obvious. To us now, I'm telling you, and it's becoming obvious. Once you see it, you'll see, oh my God, it's obvious. But it was not obvious before because we did not look. Let us take a look at al-muttaqin. Al-muttaqin and alladhina taqaw. There's a big difference. Let's take a look at the difference. Okay, let's take a look at the difference. Look at the ayah in Surah Maryam 1972, which everybody speaks about. وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا كَانَ عَلَى رَبِّكَ حَتْمًا مَقْضِيًّا ثُمَّ نُنَجِّي الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَنَذَرُ الظَّالِمِينَ فِيهَا جِثِيًّا. There is none of you but who will encounter it in his path. And it here refers to Jahannam because the ayah before that speaks about Jahannam. And Allah says, كَانَ عَلَى رَبِّكَ حَتْمًا مَقْضِيًّا. It is a certainty incumbent upon your Lord which will come to pass. None of you but shall pass by it. In minkum illa wariduha. The next ayah. Then we shall save those who attained awareness and shall leave the wrongdoers in it, meaning in Jahannam, on their knees, crouching. ثم ننجي الذين اتقوا ونذر الظالمين فيها جثيا. We're talking about hell here. So الذين اتقوا shall pass by and shall be saved. And everybody says, Ya Allah, may we be among them. I say, Ya Allah, may we be among al-muttaqeen. We do not want to be among the ladina taqaw who shall pass by hell. We want to be among al-muttaqeen. Why? Why? I'll tell you why in a moment. Another ayah in Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, ayah 61 speaks about al-ladina taqaw. Again, they are in the verbal state. They're not yet in the noun state. On the day of resurrection, Yawm al-Qiyamah, will you see those who lied against God? تَرَى الَّذِينَ كَذَبُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ وُجُوهُهُمْ مُسْوَدَّةٌ. Their faces will be darkened. أَلَيْسَ فِي جَهَنَّمَ مَثْوًى لِلْمُتَكَبِّرِينَ. Is there not in hell an abode for the arrogant? Next ayah. But God will deliver those who attained awareness to their place of salvation. وَيُنَجِّي اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا. It's a verb. بِمَفَازَتِهِمْ لَا يَمَسُّهُمُ السُّوءُ وَلَهُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They shall be taken to a place of salvation because of their foes, because of what they have done of awareness in life. No evil shall touch them, nor shall they grieve. May we be among them, yes, but may we also, inshallah, be higher and be among al-muttaqeen. We do not want to be there and have Allah save us. We want to be saved already, pre-saved. Pre-saved. And that is for al-muttaqeen. How do we know that? Very easy. Let us look at the word إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ. Put it in the Qur'an search engine. You will get six ayat, not one. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي مَقَامٍ أَمِينٍ. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَعِيمٍ. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَهَرٍ. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي ظِلَالٍ وَعُيُونٍ. 6 ayat. One after the other. You'll get them. Telling you that al-muttaqeen fi maqamin ameen fi jannatin wa uyun. They never went through all that trial and tribulation on the day of judgment or on the day of akhirah or on the day of resurrection. They are already fi maqamin ameen. May we be among them, Ya Rab. May we be among them, Ya Rab. But does that mean that we're not special if we are of alladhina taqaw? No, we still are very special. So do not let that let you down. We are very special. And alladhina taqaw, we are very special people, inshallah. We can be among awliya Allah, actually. We are among those close to Allah. Waliullah is somebody who is ala qurb min Allah. Wilaya. And Allah gives us his guardianship. Allah is our guardian. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. Okay, so we have to have faith and كانوا يتقون. Not الذين آمنوا واتقوا. الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. So it's constant. So we still have what? We still have a chance there to be آمنوا. Yes, that's us, inshallah. الذين آمنوا. We are definitely الذين آمنوا. We're here today, right? We're fasting. We're الذين آمنوا, inshallah. But are we of الذين كانوا يتقون constantly? Inshallah. Inshallah. Let's try to be of those. That is something we can be. May Allah consider us amongst al-muttaqeen. We don't know, but what we can do is be of الذين كانوا يتقون. لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة لا تبديل لكلمات الله ذلك هو الفوز العظيم. Allah shall give us glad tidings in the lowly life and in the hereafter, and His words shall know no change. So inshallah, that is what we are, that is what we can be, and that is how we shall conclude our meeting today. May Ramadan be the time for us to gather taqwa. We are only, what, 1/3 through Ramadan. We still have 2/3 of it. We can be better. We can do better. I say that to myself. I know my shortcomings, and they are huge, believe me. I will be ashamed to tell you of my shortcomings. My shortcomings are huge. But inshallah, may Allah help me and help you improve. And may we be amongst al-muttaqeen, ya Rabb. If not now, at least before we die, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today we talked about taqwa, we defined awareness, we talked about the common exchange between the faithful people at that time, which is not necessarily according, it is according to what they speak, but they do not talk of Qur'an because they consider it a given, whereas we have left the Qur'an and gone to what they're saying. We should go back to both Qur'an and what they're saying. And we spoke about awareness and aggression that they can never meet. We spoke about Furqaan, which is discernment in the now. May Allah give it to us. We spoke about awareness being one of God's signs. We spoke about awareness should be the basis of every endeavor, and that we gather it during our acts of worship. It's the most important provision, and it is in how we deal with our family and wealth that we should be aware of God as we can. However, and how we deal with ourselves and our efforts to maintain community and be one community, that is, we should be aware as is Allah's due. Taqullah haqqa tuqatih. And we spoke about the garments, awareness as the highest garment. Once it's lost, the next garment is the most important, which is luxury. And of course, in a state in which luxury and awareness are lost, then the importance is upon the basic necessities, which is what happens during wars and catastrophes. And that even in the process of being al-muttaqeen, inshallah, may Allah make us amongst them, we are still very important people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and alladhina taqaw are important and they shall be saved. But inshallah, we always wish for the higher, for earning the title al-muttaqeen, and we can be today of awliya Allah, and inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that we are of al-muttaqeen and في جنات وعيون إن شاء الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين